the impossible problem. The Galactic Council chamber floated in the void between stars, a crystalline structure that housed representatives from 700 civilized species. Today the chamber buzzed with unusual tension. Ambassador Thesira of the Vex Theory adjusted her chromatic scales, her 4 eyes scanning the holographic display before her. The problem was simple to state, impossible to solve. The null cascade approaching the meridian cluster would destroy 43 inhabited systems within 6 standard cycles. Every simulation, every calculation, every theoretical physicist across known space had reached the same conclusion. There was no solution. The evacuation protocols are insufficient, droned Counselor Bractham, his rocky Letharian form barely moving as he spoke. We cannot relocate 8 billion sentient beings in the time remaining. Thesira's throat sac deflated in resignation. She had led the Vex Theory people for 3 centuries and had never faced such helplessness. The null cascade, a tear in spacetime itself, was expanding geometrically, consuming everything in its path and leaving nothing, not even quantum foam, in its wake. Perhaps, suggested High Scholar Kixtera, her gaseous form shimmering with bioluminescent despair, we should focus on preserving genetic material and cultural archives. The species may survive if not the individuals. A heavy silence settled over the chamber. It was the silence of acceptance, of species preparing to mourn billions of their own. Then an unfamiliar voice crackled through the translation matrix. Yeah, about that whole, impossible problem thing. Every sensory organ in the chamber focused on the small view screen displaying the newest Council observer species. The humans had been granted provisional status only 2 cycles ago, their primitive faster-than-light technology barely qualifying them for galactic acknowledgement. The human representative, a female named Captain Dyson Reeves, leaned back in her chair with what the translation software labeled as casual confidence. Her dark skin gleamed under harsh station lighting, and her smile carried an expression the Vex Theory database identified as troubling amusement. Captain Reeves, Thesira said carefully, the Council appreciates Earth's enthusiasm, but our finest minds have spent 6 weeks modeling the problem with quantum processors and gravitational calculus. Yeah, I read the reports. Reeves scratched her close-cropped hair. Very thorough. Very sophisticated. Very doomed. Bractham's form rumbled with what might have been offense. If you are suggesting that humanity, barely emerged from their own stellar system, has insight that eludes civilizations millions of years your senior. Oh, absolutely not. Reeves grinned wider. We're not smarter than you. We're just differently educated. She tapped her data pad, and a new schematic appeared in the chamber's central display. Thesira felt her scales ripple in confusion. The design looked like something a juvenile might draw, crude, violent, and thermodynamically reckless. Is that, Kixtera's voice rose an octave, a bomb? Not just any bomb, Reeves corrected. The biggest bomb we can build in 5 days. We're calling it Project Thunderchild. The chamber erupted in overlapping protests. Thesira raised 3 of her hands for silence. Captain, directed energy weapons cannot disrupt a null cascade. The physics aren't about disrupting it, Reeves interrupted. They're about punching it in the face so hard it remembers why it should have stayed in whatever mathematical hell it crawled out of. Thesira accessed her cultural database again. The translation was still processing, but she was beginning to suspect that humanity's entrance onto the galactic stage was going to be far more turbulent than anticipated. Explain, she commanded. Reeves stood, her posture shifting into something more serious. Look, you're all thinking about this like civilized beings. Energy conservation, elegant solutions, minimal disruption to spacetime. That's beautiful really. But sometimes. She pulled up another schematic, this one showing concentric rings of fusion charges surrounding a core of compressed dark matter. Sometimes you need to stop being civilized and start being creative. This is madness, Bractham stated flatly. This is humanity, Reeves replied. And before you reject it outright, you should know that our mathematicians ran the numbers. It's insane, it's dangerous, it violates about 47 Council safety protocols, and it has a 12% chance of working. 12%. Thesira's voice carried disbelief. 12% better than your 0%. Reeves met her eyes steadily. And here's the thing about humans, we've built our entire civilization on finding the 12% and riding it all the way to victory. The chamber fell silent again, but this time it was different. This time, it was the silence of beings who had forgotten that desperation sometimes required embracing the unthinkable. Thesira looked at the crude, violent, impossible human design. Then she looked at the null cascade projections. "Tell me more," she said quietly. "The human method." The war room aboard the human vessel Indomitable smelled of coffee, recycled air, and what Thessaira was learning to identify as controlled chaos. She had insisted on accompanying Captain Reeves to observe the human preparations, bringing along Counselor Bractham and Scholar Kixtera as witnesses. What they found defied every principle of organized military planning. "Jensen!" Reeves shouted across the room to a man with wild red hair and a stained jumpsuit. "Tell me the core compression ratio is better than your last estimate." Dr. Marcus Jensen looked up from a holographic display showing mathematics that made Thessaira's head hurt. "Define better. If you mean, less likely to create a black hole that swallows the entire cluster, then yes, marginally better." "I'll take marginally." Reeves turned to her guest. "Ambassador, meet our chief of terrible ideas that might work. Marcus, explain Project Thunderchild to our friends." Jensen approached, carrying a data pad and what appeared to be a half-eaten sandwich. Thessaira noted that human multitasking apparently included simultaneous nutrition consumption during crisis planning. "Right, so the null cascade." Jensen pulled up a three-dimensional model. "Everyone's been treating it like a natural phenomenon that follows predictable expansion patterns. And they're correct, it does. But here's what 700 civilizations missed. It's not just consuming space-time, it's replacing it with something else." "We know this," Bractham rumbled. "The readings show quantum nullification across all measured spectra." "Exactly." Jensen pointed his sandwich at the Litharian. "You measured it. You quantified it. But did anyone ask what happens if you hit quantum nullification with enough raw energy to make it quantify that?" Kixtera's gaseous form swirled in confusion. "The energy would be consumed like everything else." "Would it though?" A new voice joined them. Commander Sarah Okonkwo, the Indomitable's weapons officer, approached with a tablet showing simulation results. "We ran 17,000 scenarios. In 87% of them, total energy absorption. But in the remaining 13%, something interesting happens." She expanded the simulation. Thessaira watched as a massive energy pulse struck the edge of the null cascade. In most timelines it simply vanished. But in some. "Is that," Thessaira leaned closer, "a resonance cascade?" "We call it pissing it off," Okonkwo grinned. "The cascade isn't a hole, it's a thing. A really angry reality-eating thing. And things that eat can choke." Jensen nodded enthusiastically. "If we hit it with enough energy in a specific pattern, basically the quantum equivalent of the brown note, we might be able to trigger a destabilization event." "Might" being the operative word, Reeves added. "The math works in 12% of scenarios. In another 30% we make it worse. In 58%, we accomplish nothing except creating a really impressive explosion." Thessaira felt her scales shifting through colors that indicated deep concern. "And if you make it worse? Then we've accelerated the inevitable by about 3 cycles, and I'll feel really bad about it for approximately 20 minutes before we all stop existing." Reeves said this with the same casual tone one might use to discuss weather patterns. Bractham's rocky form ground in agitation. "This is unacceptable. You are proposing to gamble billions of lives on a 12% probability." "No," Reeves corrected, her casual demeanor suddenly absent. "I'm proposing to gamble billions of lives on 12% instead of watching them die with 100% certainty. There's a difference." The room fell quiet. In the background, Thessaira could hear dozens of humans working, shouting calculations, arguing over designs, laughing at jokes she didn't understand. They worked with an intensity that was almost manic, as if they could outrun death itself through pure stubborn effort. "Your species is very strange," Thessaira said finally. "You have no idea," Jensen replied. "Last week, engineering tried to solve a coolant leak by rerouting it through the coffee maker. It actually worked. It made terrible coffee," Okonkwo added. "But the leak stopped." Reeves held up a hand. "Focus, people. Ambassador, you wanted to understand the human method. This is it. We don't accept impossible. We accept improbable, unlikely, and statistically inadvisable. But impossible?" She shook her head. "Impossible is just a challenge we haven't insulted properly yet." Kixtera pulsed with what her species used to indicate intense curiosity. "In our observations of your species, we noticed a peculiar phrase that appears frequently in your historical records before major undertakings. Hold my beer. What does this signify?" The humans in the room exchanged glances. Several smiled. "It's what we say," Reeves explained, "right before we do something spectacular, stupid, or both. Usually both. It means watch this and I probably shouldn't, and damn the torpedoes all rolled into one beautiful package of questionable decision-making. And this, Thesira gestured at the war room, the schematics, the controlled chaos, is a hold my beer moment? Ambassador, Reeves grinned, this is the biggest hold my beer moment in human history. We're going to punch a hole in reality's face and make it flinch. Bractham processed this for a long moment. You are all insane. Probably, Jensen agreed cheerfully. But we're insane with really good engineering degrees, which is the most dangerous kind. Thesira made a decision that would either save billions or doom her to historical infamy. How can the council assist? Reeves' expression shifted to something more serious, more focused. We need resources. Dark matter collectors, fusion cores, and every ounce of exotic matter you can spare. Also, she paused, we need the council to evacuate everyone they can. Because if this doesn't work, I want as many people as possible far away from ground zero. And if it does work? Kixtera asked. Then, Reeves said, pulling up a schematic that looked like organized madness given physical form, the galaxy learns that humans don't accept extinction. We don't do graceful last stands. We do spite, fury, and explosions that violate several fundamental laws of physics. Thesira looked at the design for Project Thunderchild. A weapon that shouldn't work, built by a species that shouldn't exist, designed to solve a problem that shouldn't have a solution. The council will provide the resources, she said. And may whatever gods you believe in have mercy on us all. We believe in ourselves, Jensen said simply. It's terrifying, but it's worked so far. Building the impossible. The construction of Project Thunderchild proceeded with a speed that horrified council observers and delighted human engineers. Within 18 hours, the skeleton of the device stretched across 3 kilometers of space near the Meridian Cluster's edge. It looked less like a weapon and more like something a mad god might build during a fever dream. A spherical lattice of dark matter conduits surrounding a core that pulsed with barely contained fusion reactions. Thesira watched from the observation deck of the Indomitable as human work crews swarmed across the structure like insects on a corpse. No, she corrected herself, like antibodies fighting an infection. The humans moved with purpose, even when that purpose seemed suicidal. You should see the safety violation reports, said a voice beside her. She turned to find Commander Chen Nakamura, the Indomitable's chief engineer, holding a data pad and grinning. His black hair was disheveled, his uniform covered in what she hoped was engine grease, and his eyes carried the manic gleam she was learning to associate with humans who were in the zone. How many violations? She asked. Stopped counting at 400. Nakamura pulled up a schematic. See that conduit there? It's running at 140% recommended capacity. And that fusion bottle? We've bypassed 17 safety protocols. Oh, and the dark matter containment? Held together partially by what we're calling aggressive optimism and really good tape. Tape. Thesira's scales went pale. Quantum-bonded nanofiber tape, but yeah, basically tape. Nakamura's grin widened. Look, Ambassador, here's the thing about safety protocols. They're designed to keep things from exploding. But sometimes you need an explosion. You just need it to be the right explosion at the right time. Through the viewport, Thesira watched as a massive dark matter collector, donated by the Litharian Collective, was maneuvered into position by human crews who sang while they worked. Actually sang. She had listened to the translation. We all live in a quantum death machine, quantum death machine, quantum death machine. Your species has a song for this situation? She asked. We have a song for every situation. It's how we cope with existential terror. Nakamura pulled up another display. Want to see something really cool? We're 22 hours ahead of schedule. How is that possible? The Vex Theory engineers estimated minimum construction time at 6 standard cycles. Because Vex Theory engineers, Nakamura said with deep respect, are smart enough to build things properly. We're just crazy enough to build them fast. See that team over there? He pointed at a group working on the core assembly. That's Lieutenant Ramos and her crew. They've been awake for 36 hours straight, fueled by coffee and spite. As if summoned by her name, Lieutenant Sofia Ramos appeared on the communications channel, her dark eyes bloodshot but focused. Nakamura, tell me someone remembered to invert the polarity on Junction 7 or we're going to have a really bad day. Checked and double-checked, Nakamura replied. Also, you need to sleep. I'll sleep when I'm dead, which might be in 4 days if we don't finish this thing. Ramos signed off with what the translator called an anatomically improbable suggestion regarding proper rest schedules. Bractham joined them at the viewport, his massive form somehow conveying bewilderment despite being made of living rock. I have been reviewing your progress reports. You are building a weapon of unprecedented scale with a crew of 217 beings. 218, Nakamura corrected. Martinez from hydroponics volunteered. Turns out she has a doctorate in exotic physics. Who knew? This would require thousands of specialized technicians from any other species. Yeah, but other species have specialized technicians. We have humans who watched educational videos and decided they were basically experts now. Nakamura's tone was joking, but Thassira detected pride underneath. Plus, we've got something you don't. Which is desperation, stubbornness, and a cultural aversion to being told something can't be done. Nakamura pulled up a real-time feed from inside the Thunderchild's core. See those people working in hazard suits? They're being exposed to radiation levels that would kill most species in minutes. Humans can tank it for about 4 hours before we rotate them out. That is horrifying, Kixtera pulsed, having drifted over to join the conversation. That's evolution on a death world, Nakamura replied cheerfully. Earth didn't make us the smartest or the strongest. It made us the most stubborn. We're persistence predators on a cosmic scale. Dr. Jensen appeared on the viewport's edge, suspended in zero gravity while directing a team installing the quantum destabilization array. His voice crackled through the comms. Reeves, we've got a problem with the resonance dampeners. They're not gonna hold under full power. From somewhere else on the ship, Reeves' voice responded. Define not gonna hold. I mean, there's a 60% chance they'll catastrophically fail and create a chain reaction that turns everyone within 50 kilometers into their component atoms. Pause. Then, what if we double layer them? Then there's only a 40% chance, but we'll be 8 hours behind schedule. Another pause. Thassira watched the humans processing this information, weighing death against delay. Do it, Reeves said. I want everyone to walk away from this. Well, everyone who's not already in the blast radius of a reality-eating space monster. Jensen signaled acknowledgement and began barking orders at his team. Thassira noted that no one questioned the decision, no one argued about the delay. They simply adapted and continued. Your captain values individual lives, she observed. Every good captain does, Nakamura replied. But Reeves is special. She knows that every person on this mission volunteered, knows they're willing to die, and is absolutely determined to make sure they don't have to. It's why we follow her into insane situations like this. Through the viewport, Project Thunderchild continued to grow. Its structure was inelegant, its design was crude by galactic standards, and its safety margins were what Thassira's engineers would classify as criminal negligence. It was also, she had to admit, magnificent. A human creation born of desperation and defiance, taking shape in the void. Not because it was the best solution, but because it was a solution. Because humanity had looked at certain doom and said, not today. Commander Nakamura, she said quietly, what do humans call this? This refusal to accept reality? Nakamura considered the question seriously. We call it a lot of things. Stubbornness, determination, insanity. But I think the word you're looking for is hope. Not the quiet kind that wishes for better days. The loud, angry kind that builds impossible weapons because the alternative is unacceptable. And if it fails? Then we fail spectacularly knowing we tried. He smiled. Besides, failure's just another word for data for the next attempt. Assuming anyone survives to make one. Outside, a human engineer accidentally triggered a plasma discharge that lit up the construction site like a newborn star. Over the comms, someone shouted, Jenkins, that was awesome, but please don't do it again. Jenkins, whoever he was, replied with laughter. Thassira found herself making a sound her species associated with resigned amusement. Your people are going to give the entire council a collective heart attack. Yeah, Nakamura agreed, but won't it be one hell of a ride? The mathematics of madness. Dr. Yuki Tanaka's workspace looked like a bomb had gone off in a library, assuming the bomb was made of equations and the library stored only books about things that should not exist. Thassira navigated carefully through the floating holographic displays, each showing calculations that hurt to look at. Tanaka herself sat in the center of this mathematical chaos, her silver hair pulled back severely, her eyes bloodshot from 72 hours of continuous work. Don't touch the blue equation, Tanaka said without looking up. It's wrong, but I don't know why yet, and I don't want it contaminated. Contaminated? Thassira asked. The math near a null cascade gets weird. Reality's a little bit negotiable. If I look at that equation wrong, it might actually change. Tanaka finally turned, offering a tired smile. Ambassador. Come to see how we're defying the fundamental laws of physics. I was under the impression that such laws were, by definition, not defiant. Tell that to quantum mechanics. Tanaka gestured at a particularly aggressive-looking set of equations. The universe runs on rules, sure, but the rules have loopholes. Humanity's entire scientific method is basically finding loopholes and exploiting them until something useful happens. Kixtera drifted into the room, her gaseous form immediately drawn to the equations. I don't understand. You're treating spacetime as if it has emotional responses. Because it kind of does. Tanaka pulled up a simulation. Look, the null cascade isn't just destroying reality, it's replacing it with a different set of rules. Rules that say, nothing can exist here. But what if we introduce so much energy so violently, that reality has to choose between two impossible states? You're trying to create a paradox, Thesira realized. We're trying to create the mother of all paradoxes. Tanaka's eyes gleamed with the light of someone who had stared into the mathematical abyss and decided to throw rocks at it. The cascade says nothing can exist. Our bomb says, we're going to exist so hard that you can't ignore us. And when reality has to resolve that contradiction. She played the simulation. Thesira watched as the massive energy pulse struck the null cascade. For a moment nothing happened. Then the cascade began to flicker. Like a hologram with a loose connection. In 12% of our simulations, Tanaka continued, the cascade encounters something it can't immediately process. It tries to consume the energy, but the energy is being released faster than it can absorb. And in that moment of confusion, the underlying quantum structure becomes unstable. And then? Brack the mast having joined them. And then either it collapses back on itself, sealing the tear in spacetime, or... Tanaka pulled up another simulation. It expands catastrophically and we make everything much worse. How is this science? Brackham demanded. This is gambling with mathematical models. All science is gambling, countered Dr. Hassan al-Rashid, joining the discussion. The astrophysicist looked even more disheveled than Tanaka, his beard untrimmed, his clothes suggesting he'd forgotten the concept of changing them. Every experiment is a bet that our understanding of reality is close enough to correct that we won't accidentally destroy something important. But you don't understand the null cascade fully, Kixtera protested. You've had 6 standard cycles to study a phenomenon other civilizations have researched for millennia. Exactly. Al-Rashid grinned. We're not weighed down by preconceptions. We looked at your research, said, that's very nice, and then asked the one question none of you apparently thought to ask. Which was, what if we hit it really, really hard? Al-Rashid pulled up his own set of calculations. See, established galactic civilization thinks in terms of elegant solutions. Minimal energy expenditure, maximum efficiency, working with the natural order of things. Very enlightened. Very sophisticated. Very useless when facing an existential threat that doesn't care about your philosophical approach to physics. Tanaka nodded enthusiastically. Humans think different because we evolve different. We're from a death world where the natural order of things included predators with bigger teeth, diseases with no cure, and weather patterns that could kill entire populations. We learned early that sometimes the elegant solution is just dying politely. So we developed a preference, Al-Rashid continued, for solutions that work over solutions that are pretty. And sometimes works means apply overwhelming force until the problem stops being a problem. Thesira studied the equations again. Buried in the mathematical chaos was something that resembled, not quite genius but its louder, more aggressive cousin. Your calculations, she said slowly, rely on assumptions that contradict established quantum field theory. Only the boring parts, Tanaka replied. Look, quantum field theory works great for describing how reality functions normally. But the null cascade isn't normal. It's reality having a stroke. So we threw out the parts of quantum theory that assume reality is functioning properly and kept the parts that describe what happens when it's not. That's not how scientific method works. It's not how your scientific method works, Al-Rashid corrected gently. Human science is built on trial and error with heavy emphasis on the error part. We blow things up, take notes and try again. It's messy, it's dangerous, and it's produced everything from atomic energy to chocolate chip cookies. How do cookies relate to? Happy accident during an experiment, Tanaka interrupted. The scientist was trying to make regular chocolate cookies, messed up the recipe and discovered something better. That's humanity in a nutshell. We fail forward. Lieutenant Commander Priya Singh appeared at the doorway, carrying a data pad and what appeared to be energy bars. Doctors, you need to eat. Ambassador, counselor, scholar, you might want to see this. She pulled up a new display. It showed the Null Cascade's current expansion rate overlaid with Project Thunderchild's construction timeline. We're going to be cutting it close, Singh said. The Cascade will reach the first inhabited planet in 4.2 cycles. Thunderchild will be ready to deploy in 3.8 cycles. That leaves only 0.4 cycles for final testing, Bractham noted. About that, Tanaka said carefully. We're not going to test it. The room went very quiet. You're not. Thesira felt her scales shift to colors indicating extreme distress. You're deploying an untested weapon based on theoretical mathematics that contradict established physics? When you say it like that, it sounds irresponsible, Al-Rashid admitted. But testing would require building a second null cascade, which seems counterproductive. Plus, we don't have time. This is insanity. This is Thursday, Singh replied. You should see what we do on Fridays. Tanaka pulled up a final simulation, the full deployment sequence for Project Thunderchild. Thesira watched as the massive weapon approached the cascade, as it released its payload of concentrated fury, as reality itself seemed to hold its breath. And then, in 12% of the simulations, the impossible happened. The cascade collapsed. We've checked the math 17,000 times, Tanaka said softly. Peer-reviewed by every qualified physicist in the fleet. The mathematics is sound even if it's completely insane. It should work. Should, Thesira repeated. Should is better than won't, Al-Rashid pointed out. And right now should is all we've got. Kixtera pulsed thoughtfully. In all my years studying human culture, I've noticed you have an unusual relationship with uncertainty. We hate it, Singh said, but we're really good at it. Earth taught us that the universe doesn't care about our comfort, our understanding, or our preferred outcomes. So we learn to be comfortable being uncomfortable, to make decisions with incomplete information, and to commit fully to plans that might be completely wrong. And this helps you? Bractham asked. It keeps us moving forward, Tanaka replied. Paralysis by analysis is a luxury we can't afford. So we calculate, we estimate, we make our best guess, and then we act. Sometimes we're wrong. She smiled. But sometimes we're magnificently right. Outside the window, Project Thunderchild pulsed with growing power, a monument to humanity's refusal to accept the unacceptable. Your species terrifies me, Thesira admitted. Yeah, Al-Rashid agreed cheerfully, we get that a lot. The final countdown. With one cycle remaining before deployment, the Indomitable had transformed into organized chaos on an industrial scale. Captain Reeves stood on the bridge, surrounded by holographic displays showing everything from weapon status to evacuation progress. Her command crew moved with practiced efficiency, their exhaustion obvious but their focus absolute. Status report, Reeves commanded. Thunderchild is at 96%, reported Lieutenant Torres from weapons. The remaining 4% is quantum destabilization arrays that frankly scare me too much to call complete. Evacuation? Reeves asked. Commander Jackson checked his display. We've pulled 6.3 billion people out of the target zone. Still working on the rest. The Vex Theory evacuation fleet is performing miracles, but there's only so much transport capacity. Reeves' jaw tightened. 2 billion people still in the Cascade's path. 2 billion lives depending on a 12% chance. Captain, said Ensign Park from Communications, incoming transmission from the Galactic Council. It's marked urgent and apologetic. On screen. Ambassador Thesira appeared, her scales showing colors Reeves had learned indicated deep concern mixed with resignation. Behind her stood representatives from a dozen other species, all wearing expressions that transcended the need for translation. Captain Reeves, Thesira began, the Council has completed its final assessment of Project Thunderchild. Here it comes, Reeves thought. The part where they tell us we're insane and need to stand down. We have concluded, Thesira continued, that your plan violates approximately 237 safety regulations, contradicts established scientific consensus on quantum mechanics, and represents the single most reckless military operation proposed in galactic history. Reeves felt her crew tense around her. She kept her expression neutral. However, Thesira's scales shifted to colors that suggested something like respect. It is also the only plan that offers any chance of success. The Council has voted to provide full support for Project Thunderchild's deployment. Additionally, she paused, we wish to apologize. Apologize? Reeves blinked. For what? For not thinking of it ourselves. Counselor Bractham's rocky form moved into frame. For 700 civilized species, we have prided ourselves on wisdom, caution, and careful consideration. We have built a galaxy where solutions are elegant, consensus is valued, and aggressive action is seen as primitive. And in doing so, added High Scholar Kixtera, we forgot that sometimes the universe requires not wisdom but audacity. Not careful consideration but immediate action. We became so civilized that we forgot how to fight. Thesira's 4 eyes focused on Reeves with an intensity that was almost physical. Humanity has been part of the galactic community for barely a moment. You have no grand fleets, no ancient wisdom, no technologies that we would consider advanced. But you have something we lost millennia ago. What's that? Reeves asked quietly. The willingness to look at impossible odds and say, watch this. Thesira's scales rippled with what the translation software identified as amused admiration. The Council asks permission to witness Project Thunderchild's deployment. Not to supervise. Not to interfere. But to remember what courage looks like. Reeves felt something catch in her throat. She cleared it professionally. Permission granted, Ambassador. We're honored to have you. After the transmission ended, Commander Jackson leaned close. That was unexpected. Everything about this week has been unexpected, Reeves replied. Might as well add galactic recognition to the list. How's the crew holding up? They're tired, they're scared, and they're absolutely convinced we're going to pull this off. Jackson smiled. Standard human condition, really? The next 20 hours passed in a blur of final preparations, system checks, and what Dr. Jensen called aggressive last-minute improvisation. The improvisation in question involved replacing a critical power coupling with one cannibalized from the ship's secondary reactor, held in place by what Nakamura insisted was very sophisticated materials bonding, but which looked suspiciously like the quantum tape from earlier. At 16 hours before deployment, Reeves called an all-hands assembly. Every human in the fleet appeared on screen: engineers, soldiers, scientists, support staff. 218 faces, most showing the effects of days without proper sleep. I'm going to keep this short, Reeves began, because we've all got work to do and not much time to do it. In a few hours, we're going to attempt something that every expert in the galaxy says is impossible. We're going to punch a hole in reality, using a weapon built in 5 days from spare parts and sheer stubbornness. Some nervous laughter rippled through the assembly. The odds aren't great. 12% chance of success. But I want you to remember something. Humanity has been defying odds since we crawled out of the ocean. The odds of developing intelligence were tiny. The odds of surviving the Ice Age were laughable. The odds of reaching the stars were astronomical. She paused, making eye contact with as many faces as she could. And yet here we are. Because humans don't do things the smart way or the easy way. We do things the stubborn way. We fail, we learn, we try again. We build solutions from problems and weapons from hope. And when the universe tells us something is impossible, we take that as a personal challenge. So yeah, Project Thunderchild might fail. Probably will. But on the off chance that it works, on the 12% chance that we actually pull this off, billions of beings are going to wake up tomorrow because a bunch of humans decided that impossible just means no one's done it yet. The assembly was silent now, every face focused. I'm proud to serve with you. I'm honored to attempt the impossible with you. And I can't wait to see the looks on everyone's faces when we actually succeed. She smiled. Now let's go save a galaxy. Dismissed. As the crew returned to their stations, Dr. Tanaka approached the bridge. Captain, final calculations are complete. I've triple-checked the quantum resonance patterns, verified the energy dispersal matrices, and run the simulations one last time. And either we're brilliant or we're about to make the Null Cascades day significantly better. Tanaka shrugged. Won't know until we try. That's the most honest assessment I've heard all week. Reeves turned to her crew. Final system checks. I want every bolt tightened, every power coupling verified, and every backup system standing by. We get one shot at this. Outside the viewport, Project Thunderchild hung in space like a small mechanical moon. Its surface bristled with energy emitters, dark matter collectors, and fusion cores that pulsed with barely restrained power. It was ugly, ungainly, and absolutely magnificent. You know, Lieutenant Torres said, studying the weapon, future historians are either going to call us geniuses or use us as examples of what not to do. Why not both? Commander Jackson suggested. Reeves checked the countdown. 15 hours, 37 minutes until deployment. Get some rest, everyone, she ordered. In shifts, I know we don't have time for everyone to sleep properly. But I want you sharp for this. Alert is good, exhausted is dangerous. As her crew rotated through rest cycles, Reeves stayed on the bridge watching the countdown tick away. Ambassador Thesira's words echoed in her mind. The willingness to look at impossible odds and say, "Watch this." "Captain," Ensign Park said softly, "you should rest too." "I will," Reeves lied. "After the next status update." But she didn't. She stayed on the bridge watching the weapon they'd built and the cascade they were going to fight, and wondered if 12% was enough. It had to be. Because the alternative was unthinkable and humans aged the moment of truth. The null cascade loomed like a wound in space itself, a perfect sphere of absolute nothing that grew larger with each passing second. From the Indomitable's bridge, it looked almost peaceful, if you ignored the fact that it represented the complete annihilation of everything that made reality reality. "Deployment in T-30 minutes, Lieutenant Torres announced. Captain Reeves stood at the center of her bridge, surrounded by her exhausted, brilliant, slightly manic crew. Around them, the Galactic Council's observation fleet maintained a respectful distance. Close enough to witness history, far enough to survive if history went catastrophically wrong. "Thunderchild status?" Reeves asked. "All systems green," Commander Nakamura reported. His hands moved across his console with the confidence of someone who'd built the impossible and was reasonably sure it wouldn't explode prematurely. "Dark matter collectors are charged, fusion cores are stable, quantum destabilization arrays. Well, it's still scary, but it's functioning within parameters." "Define within parameters," Dr. Jensen said from his station, where he monitored the weapon's quantum state. "It's not catastrophically failing yet." "I'll take it." Reeves pulled up the tactical display. Project Thunderchild had been towed into position by 4 of humanity's heaviest transport vessels, positioned precisely 300,000 kilometers from the cascade's edge. Close enough to ensure maximum effect, far enough to give the transport ships time to escape before detonation. "Transport crews, sound off," she commanded. 4 voices responded in sequence, each confirming their readiness to deploy and evacuate. The last voice belonged to Lieutenant Sofia Ramos, who'd insisted on personally piloting the lead transport despite being awake for what Reeves suspected was approaching 90 hours straight. "Ramos, you sure you're good for this?" "Captain, I helped build this crazy thing. I want to be there when it either saves the galaxy or creates the most impressive obituary in human history." "Fair enough. All transports, prepare for final positioning." On the observation channel, Ambassador Thesira appeared. Her scales displayed colors Reeves couldn't quite interpret. Anticipation mixed with dread, perhaps, or maybe just the alien equivalent of holding one's breath. "Captain Reeves, the Council wishes to convey our—" I believe the human phrase is "good luck." "Appreciated, Ambassador. Might want to shield your sensory organs. This is going to get bright." Across the fleet, humans made their final preparations. Engineers triple-checked systems they'd already checked a dozen times. Scientists reviewed calculations they'd memorized days ago. Soldiers cleaned weapons that probably wouldn't be useful against a spacetime anomaly but did it anyway because it was something to do with nervous hands. "T-20 minutes, Torres called out. Dr. Tanaka appeared on the bridge, looking somehow even more disheveled than usual. "Captain, last-minute thought. Please tell me it's not a critical flaw in our calculations." "No, nothing like that. I just wanted to say, if this works, we're going to rewrite physics textbooks across 700 civilizations. And if it doesn't work, at least we'll die knowing we tried something no one else dared to try." That's remarkably philosophical for someone who's been mainlining coffee for 5 days. "Sleep deprivation makes me contemplative." Tanaka smiled. "Also, I'm pretty sure I'm hallucinating slightly, but the math still checks out, so we're probably fine." "Probably fine," Reeves repeated. The motto of humanity's space program. T-15 minutes. The bridge fell quiet except for the soft hum of systems and the occasional beep of status updates. Reeves watched her crew, these remarkable, stubborn, brilliant people who'd built a weapon from hope and spite in less than a week. "Captain," Ensign Park said quietly, "there's a transmission coming in from Earth. It's marked for you personally." Reeves stepped aside to take the call. Her wife's face appeared on the screen, and for a moment, the weight of command lifted that AD built an entire civilization on refusing to accept the unthinkable. "All right," she said to the empty bridge, to Project Thunderchild, to the universe itself. "Hold my beer." The moment of truth. The null cascade loomed like a wound in space itself, a perfect sphere of absolute nothing that grew larger with each passing second. From the Indomitable's bridge, it looked almost peaceful, if you ignored the fact that it represented the complete annihilation of everything that made reality reality. Deployment in T-minus 30 minutes, Lieutenant Torres announced. Captain Reeves stood at the center of her bridge, surrounded by her exhausted, brilliant, slightly manic crew. Around them, the Galactic Council's observation fleet maintained a respectful distance. Close enough to witness history, far enough to survive if history went catastrophically wrong. Thunderchild status? Reeves asked. All systems green, Commander Nakamura reported. His hands moved across his console with the confidence of someone who'd built the impossible and was reasonably sure it wouldn't explode prematurely. Dark matter collectors are charged, fusion cores are stable, quantum destabilization arrays. Well, it's still scary, but it's functioning within parameters. Define within parameters, Dr. Jensen said from his station, where he monitored the weapon's quantum state. It's not catastrophically failing yet. I'll take it. Reeves pulled up the tactical display. Project Thunderchild had been towed into position by 4 of humanity's heaviest transport vessels, positioned precisely 300,000 kilometers from the Cascade's edge. Close enough to ensure maximum effect, far enough to give the transport ships time to escape before detonation. Transport crews, sound off, she commanded. 4 voices responded in sequence, each confirming their readiness to deploy and evacuate. The last voice belonged to Lieutenant Sofia Ramos, who'd insisted on personally piloting the lead transport despite being awake for what Reeves suspected was approaching 90 hours straight. Ramos, you sure you're good for this? Captain, I helped build this crazy thing. I want to be there when it either saves the galaxy or creates the most impressive obituary in human history. Fair enough. All transports, prepare for final positioning. On the observation channel, Ambassador Thessaira appeared. Her scales displayed colors Reeves couldn't quite interpret. Anticipation mixed with dread, perhaps, or maybe just the alien equivalent of holding one's breath. Captain Reeves, the Council wishes to convey our... I believe the human phrase is good luck. Appreciated, Ambassador. Might want to shield your sensory organs. This is going to get bright. Across the fleet, humans made their final preparations. Engineers triple-checked systems they'd already checked a dozen times. Scientists reviewed calculations they'd memorized days ago. Soldiers cleaned weapons that probably wouldn't be useful against a space-time anomaly but did it anyway because it was something to do with nervous hands. T-minus 20 minutes, Torres called out. Dr. Tanaka appeared on the bridge, looking somehow even more disheveled than usual. Captain, last-minute thought. Please tell me it's not a critical flaw in our calculations. No, nothing like that. I just wanted to say, if this works, we're going to rewrite physics textbooks across 700 civilizations. And if it doesn't work, at least we'll die knowing we tried something no one else dared to try. That's remarkably philosophical for someone who's been mainlining coffee for 5 days. Sleep deprivation makes me contemplative. Tanaka smiled. Also, I'm pretty sure I'm hallucinating slightly, but the math still checks out, so we're probably fine. Probably fine, Reeves repeated. The motto of humanity's space program. T-minus 15 minutes. The bridge fell quiet except for the soft hum of systems and the occasional beep of status updates. Reeves watched her crew, these remarkable, stubborn, brilliant people who'd built a weapon from hope and spite in less than a week. Captain, Ensign Park said quietly, there's a transmission coming in from Earth. It's marked for you personally. Reeves stepped aside to take the call. Her wife's face appeared on the screen, and for a moment the weight of command lifted. Hey you, Maya said softly. Heard you're about to do something stupid. It's what I do best. I know. It's why I married you. Maya's smile was warm despite the light years between them. The kids want to say they love you. I want to say I'm proud of you. And we're all going to be here when you come back. When, not if. You're too stubborn to die, Dyson. The universe knows better than to try. Maya touched her screen. Now go punch reality in the face and come home. The transmission ended. Reeves took a breath, centered herself and returned to command. T-minus 10 minutes. All stations, final check. Around the bridge, her crew called out their readiness. Systems green, calculations verified, crews prepared. Everything was as ready as it was ever going to be. Transport teams begin final approach. On the main screen, for human vessels advanced toward the Null Cascade, towing Project Thunderchild between them. The weapon pulsed with contained energy, its dark matter collectors glowing with an eerie purple light, its fusion cores burning with the light of newborn stars. T-minus 5 minutes. Weapon deployment at designated coordinates. The transports released their cargo and began their retreat. Project Thunderchild hung alone in space, a human-built challenge to the universe's cruelty. All transport crews report successful evacuation. Minimum safe distance achieved. T-3 minutes. Initiating primary systems activation. On screen, Thunderchild came alive. Energy coursed through its lattice structure, dark matter streams flowing like rivers of compressed void, fusion reactions building to a crescendo that would either save billions or doom them all. Quantum destabilization array activated, Jensen reported. Resonance patterns matching theoretical models. We're actually doing this. We're really actually doing this. T-2 minutes. Reeves gripped her command chair. Across the fleet, across the galaxy, billions of beings watched and waited. Some prayed to gods whose names she didn't know. Others simply hoped, in whatever way their species understood hope. "Captain," Torres said, her voice steady despite everything, "permission to say something inappropriate?" "Granted. This is either going to be really awesome or really, really bad." "Profound, Lieutenant." T-1 minute. All systems optimal. Weapon is autonomous from this point. The bridge fell silent. Even the background hum of systems seemed to quiet, as if the ship itself was holding its breath. 30 seconds. On the screen, Project Thunderchild rotated into its final attack position, its business end pointed directly at the Null Cascade's heart. 20 seconds. Reeves thought about Earth, about humanity's long journey from caves to stars. About every impossible thing her species had accomplished through sheer stubborn refusal to accept failure. 10 seconds. About Maya and the kids waiting on Earth. 5, 4, 3. About 2 billion people who didn't know their lives depended on a 12% chance. 2, 1. About the moment when mathematics became reality and theory became practice. Deployment. Project Thunderchild fired. The weapon didn't explode so much as it expressed itself violently upon the universe. Every fusion core detonated simultaneously, channeling their energy through the dark matter collectors, amplifying it through the quantum destabilization array, and releasing it in a pulse that made nearby stars flicker. The energy wave struck the Null Cascade. For exactly 3 seconds nothing happened. Then reality screamed. The cascade flickered, its perfect sphere distorting as it tried to process an amount of energy that shouldn't exist being delivered at a speed that violated several physical constants. The quantum destabilization array did its work, introducing contradictory states into the cascade structure, forcing it to exist and not exist simultaneously. "It's working," Tanaka breathed. "Holy shit, it's actually working." The cascade convulsed, its expansion halting as it turned its attention inward, trying to consume the energy that was consuming it. The sphere began to collapse, folding in on itself, reality rushing back to fill the void. "Captain," Torres shouted, secondary resonance cascade forming. "The energy feedback is..." The universe hiccuped. Space-time itself rippled outward from the collision point, a wave of distortion that passed through the observation fleet like a ghost. For one horrible moment, Reeves felt herself exist in every possible state simultaneously, alive and dead, successful and failed, present and absent. Then reality decided which version of events it preferred, and everything snapped back into focus. The Null Cascade was gone. In its place hung a perfectly normal region of space, empty and boring and absolutely beautiful in its mundane stability. The bridge erupted in chaos, cheering, crying, laughing. Someone started singing that song about the quantum death machine again. Dr. Jensen hugged Dr. Tanaka, both of them laughing like maniacs. Commander Nakamura was swearing in 3 languages, which apparently meant he was happy. "All stations, status report," Reeves managed, her voice not quite steady. "All systems nominal," Jackson reported. "No casualties, no major damage. The fleet's intact, the cascade is gone and... Captain, we did it. We actually did it." On the observation channel, Ambassador Thesira stared at the empty space where the cascade had been. Her scales cycled through colors Reeves had never seen before. "Captain Reeves," she said finally, I have no words. In 700 civilizations worth of history, I have no precedent for what humanity just accomplished." "With respect, Ambassador," Reeves replied, grinning so wide her face hurt, "you'd better find some words. Because I'm going to need them for my report." "Hold my beer." 3 standard cycles after the Null Cascade's collapse, the Galactic Council convened in full formal session for the first time in 2 centuries. 700 species gathered in person, not as holographic representatives, but as physical beings willing to make the journey to witness history being made. Captain Dyson Reeves stood before them, cleaned up and wearing an actual formal uniform for once, though she'd drawn the line at the ceremonial hat that her superiors had suggested. Beside her stood her core team, Commander Nakamura, Dr. Tanaka, Dr. Jensen, Commander Jackson, and Lieutenant Torres. Behind them, the rest of the Thunderchild crew stood at attention, their exhaustion finally fading into something like pride. Ambassador Thesira addressed the assembly, her scales displaying formal colors of deep importance. Honored members of the Galactic Council, we gather to acknowledge an unprecedented event in our collective history. 43 inhabited systems, home to 8.2 billion sentient beings, were saved from certain destruction by Project Thunderchild, designed and deployed by humanity in less than one standard week. Murmurs rippled through the chamber. Reeves noticed that the murmurs weren't skeptical anymore, they were something closer to awe. The Council's finest minds deemed the null cascade impossible to stop, Thesira continued. Our greatest engineers saw no solution. Our most advanced civilizations accepted the necessity of evacuation and preservation over salvation and action. We were prepared to mourn billions and move forward with the wisdom of acceptance. She paused, her 4 eyes fixing on Reeves. And then humanity said, and I quote, "Hold my beer." Scattered laughter echoed through the chamber, mostly from the humans in attendance, but Reeves noticed a few other species had started to understand the phrase's significance. Counselor Bractham's massive form rumbled forward. Captain Reeves, the Litharian Collective wishes to apologize. We advised against your plan. We called it reckless, dangerous, and mathematically unsound. You were right about 2 of those things, Reeves replied diplomatically. And yet you succeeded where we failed, not because you knew more but because you dared more. Bractham's form shifted and what Reeves had learned was their equivalent of a bow. The Litharians have existed for 12 million of your years. We have built megastructures, mapped galaxies and unlocked secrets of the universe. But we had forgotten how to be brave. High Scholar Kixtera pulsed forward. The Quantum Collective has completed its analysis of Project Thunderchild's deployment. The mathematics should not have worked. The energy ratios were impossible. The quantum destabilization array violated 3 fundamental constants. And yet, Dr. Tanaka stepped forward slightly, it did work. Because fundamental constants are only fundamental until you push them hard enough. Physics isn't a cage, it's a negotiation. Kixtera's light brightened. Precisely. For millennia, we have approached the universe as something to understand. Humanity approaches it as something to argue with. It is refreshing. More laughter, more genuine this time. Ambassador Thesira raised 3 of her hands for silence. Captain Reeves, the Galactic Council has deliberated extensively regarding humanity's status within our community. We have reviewed your species' history, your achievements, and your methods. Here it comes, Reeves thought. The part where they tell us we're too dangerous, too reckless, too unpredictable for galactic civilization. And we have concluded, Thesira continued, her scales shifting to colors of celebration, that humanity's provisional status is inadequate. Effective immediately, Earth is granted full membership in the Galactic Council, with all rights, privileges and responsibilities thereof. The chamber erupted. Species that had been members for millions of years applauded, chirped, rumbled, or expressed approval in whatever way their biology allowed. Reeves felt her crew tense with surprise behind her. Additionally, Bractham added, the Council has voted to establish a new position, Director of Impossible Solutions. Captain Reeves, you are hereby appointed to this role, with full authority to assemble teams, requisition resources, and tackle problems that the Council deems unsolvable by conventional means. You want me, Reeves said slowly, to be your official problem solver for things that are supposed to be impossible? We want you to do what you did with the Null Cascade, Thesira replied. Look at our impossible problems and say, hold my beer. Commander Jackson leaned close. Captain, that's basically a blank check to cause chaos across the galaxy. I know, Reeves whispered back. It's amazing. She stepped forward, addressing the Council directly. On behalf of humanity, we accept full membership and I accept the appointment. But I have one condition. The chamber quieted with interest. Humanity didn't save those 43 systems alone. We had support from dozens of species who provided resources, materials, and expertise even when they thought we were insane. The Litharian Collective gave us dark matter collectors. The Quantum Collective provided theoretical frameworks. The Vex Theory coordinated evacuations and provided logistical support. She gestured to the assembled council. You call what we did unprecedented, and it was. But it only worked because we combined human stubbornness with galactic resources. So my condition is this: the director of impossible solutions doesn't work alone. Every impossible problem we tackle together. Humanity brings the audacity, you bring the wisdom, and together we build solutions that neither of us could create alone. Thesira's scales rippled with colors that Reeves was learning to interpret as pleased surprise. You wish to create a permanent joint task force? I wish to prove that impossible is just a word that means we haven't collaborated enough yet. The chamber fell silent for a long moment. Then Counselor Bractham began a slow, grinding rumble that his species used to express deep approval. Others joined, Thesira's scales flashed celebration colors, Kixtera brightened like a supernova, and species Reeves hadn't even met yet expressed agreement in ways she'd need a xenobiology textbook to understand. Your condition is accepted, Thesira announced. Let it be recorded that on this day humanity taught the Galactic Council that wisdom and audacity are not opposites, but partners. That sometimes the oldest civilizations need the newest perspectives. And that the phrase, "hold my beer," is not a warning to be feared, but a promise to be celebrated. After the formal session concluded, Reeves found herself surrounded by representatives from dozens of species, all wanting to shake hands, touch appendages, or perform whatever gesture their species used to convey respect. Dr. Jensen was already deep in conversation with a group of quantum physicists about that thing we did with the destabilization array. Commander Nakamura had attracted a crowd of engineers who wanted to understand how humans could build so quickly with such apparent disregard for safety protocols. Ambassador Thesira approached Reeves privately, away from the crowd. "Captain, may I speak candidly?" "Always, Ambassador." When humanity first appeared on the galactic stage, many of us were concerned. You are a young species, aggressive by our standards, prone to taking risks that seem suicidal to those of us who have forgotten what risks look like. Thesira's scales shifted to soft, contemplative colors. We saw your approach to problems, direct, forceful, often violent, and assumed you were dangerous primitives who would need centuries of careful guidance to become civilized. And now I understand that we had confused civilized with docile. Thesira's 4 eyes focused intently. You are not primitives. You are survivors from a world that tried very hard to kill you, and you responded by becoming unkillable. You are not dangerous. You are differently dangerous, dangerous to problems rather than people. I'll take that as a compliment. It is the highest compliment the Vex theory have. Thesira extended a hand in the human gesture she'd learned. Thank you, Captain Reeves. Thank you for reminding us that the universe respects action more than contemplation, that sometimes elegant solutions are less important than effective ones, and that billions of lives are worth any amount of recklessness required to save them. Reeves shook the ambassador's hand. Thank you for trusting us. For giving us resources even when our plan sounded insane. For remembering that different doesn't mean wrong. One question, if I may? When you told your crew to hold my beer, you weren't actually holding a beer. The phrase is metaphorical? Reeves grinned. It's a metaphor for putting down whatever you're doing because you're about to do something that requires your full attention and will probably be memorable. It's what humans say right before we attempt something spectacular or stupid or both. And you succeeded at being spectacular. This time. There have been plenty of moments where it was just stupid. Reeves looked out at her crew scattered throughout the chamber, sharing their experiences with species from across the galaxy. But you know what? Even the stupid moments taught us something. Humans fail more than most species, but we also learn more because every failure is just data for the next attempt. I suspect, Thesira said thoughtfully, that the galaxy is about to become a much more interesting place with humanity as full members. Ambassador, Reeves replied, you have no idea? 6 months later, the phrase "hold my beer" had entered the common vocabulary of 17 major galactic languages and was considered both a warning of impending chaos and a promise of improbable success. The Director of Impossible Solutions had tackled 3 major projects, resolving a decades-old resource dispute through what she called aggressive mediation, developing a new faster-than-light communication system using principles the engineers insisted shouldn't work, and saving a dying star through what Dr. Jensen described as weaponized thermodynamics. Project Thunderchild had been dismantled and its components returned to their original owners, but the plans remained archived in the Galactic Council's database, classified under break glass in case of impossible emergency. And somewhere on Earth, in a small house in California, Maya Reeves told her children the story of how their mother had punched a hole in reality and won, and how sometimes the bravest thing you can do is look at impossible odds and say, "Watch this." The children asked if Mommy was coming home soon. Maya smiled and told them yes, but first she had to go teach the galaxy what else Hold My Beer could accomplish. Because that's what humans did. They looked at the impossible, rolled up their sleeves and got to work. And the universe, for all its vast age and infinite complexity, was learning to be very, very impressed.